Alrighty, everybody, we are live, and it is Justice Watch Live, episode 11. So we're running a lot later than usual, but I wanted to do this last night and ran into some issues with YouTube. Had to get things sorted out with them. It appears, unfortunately, I'll do a little update on that in case any of my subscribers or membership members will tune into this live. Looks like it's going to be a little while before I will be able to offer any YouTube memberships or anything like that, but I did get some things set up that kind of go around that. It's called Buy Me a Coffee. So there's a URL or a little, if you put your phone camera up, you'll see it'll take you to that page. I've got it up a little QR code there. It's a way you can support the channel. It's a neat little place. It also allows for memberships, and it allows for various different things. So I'd encourage you, hold your phone up, get a link, boom. You can do that if you're watching on like a tablet or something. And then there's a link in the description as well to get to the Buy Me a Coffee page. So check that out. Give it a check. It's a great way to help support the channel while we're going through this time, because it looks like it's going to be a little while before I'll have anything monetized again on YouTube. Is what it is, but we're going to keep plowing forward. So topic of tonight is the Nikolai Mew case, all about Mew. So we're going to talk about the verdict. I kind of did a little 5-minute video for those of you who are not familiar with this case. Nikolai Mew is a gentleman who was accused of stabbing multiple people on the Apple River after an altercation that occurred. During that altercation, he was attacked, he was punched, he was beaten up. He ended up stabbing 5 people. One person died, and he went on trial for the last week and a half. And in my opinion, in the opinion of a lot of others, we believe it was self-defense. Now, the jury found differently. It looks like they found it looks like it was a compromise verdict, meaning when they went back to the jury room, there were some back there that felt this was self-defense. There were some that felt it wasn't. It appears the majority of the individuals back there probably felt it wasn't self-defense. I don't know why that is, but they ended up working their way down, and they came down and worked their way to the middle, and the middle ended up being guilty of first-degree reckless homicide. Now, the problem with that is it's equivalent of like a manslaughter charge, but the problem is he faces up to 60 years in prison on that charge. So the judge has some leeway in what he sentences. There were multiple other. He was also convicted of attempted reckless homicide. And what that means is the judge can stack all of these sentences on top of each other. So he could give a 20-year on the reckless. He could give 10, 10, 10. Regardless, Mr. Mew's going to spend a lot of time in prison. The other thing that is not good for him is in Wisconsin, they don't have good behavior time. In other words, you have to serve all the time out that you're sentenced. So if you're sentenced to 20 years, you're serving 20 years. If you're sentenced to, if you're sentenced to 15 years, you're going to serve all 15 years. There is no good behavior. They got rid of it several years ago. And for an individual like Mr. Mew, who's 54 years old, a 30-year sentence is essentially a life sentence, which is why in this case, his attorney said, we didn't want lessers. We wanted it to be all or nothing. And I think if it would have been all or nothing, he'd have walked away with a not guilty verdict, or we'd have got a hung jury. Now, the sinister thing about all of this, right, and this is why when I heard the verdict at first, I thought he was convicted of the top level crimes. The sinister thing about this is that the state, at the very last minute, after the case after everybody had rested, they're about to do closing arguments, slid in reckless homicide. It wasn't even available. It was first or second when they were all through the trial. When the defense was defending, it was first or second degree. The state ultimately slid in first and second degree reckless homicide in at the very last moment. The judge allowed it. And this happened on the last day we were watching together. We were listening, and this is when the state came up and brought case law in and said, well, we're entitled to this. We're entitled to have this instruction. We're entitled to have the ability to have individuals or to have these charges considered. And the defense, of course, didn't want this because clearly the jury found him not guilty of first and second degree intentional homicide. So had intent not been an issue, we very well may have found ourselves with a not guilty verdict here, or maybe even a hung jury, because the jurors that were willing to go with what was seeming to them not an intentional crime, it was a reckless crime, were willing to compromise, whereas they might not have been willing to compromise. How you doing, Just Sweet? Welcome, welcome. They weren't willing to compromise. So, this is disturbing. Number one, because of how the state did this. The way they argued the case was disturbing at many levels, because it was almost devoid of paying attention to the video that was played for this jury. Now, the other thing that was interesting in this case is, video evidence, cell phone videos, like what was brought in this case, is actually evidence. In most courts and jurisdictions, the jury would be provided that video. They'd be provided with a means to play that video. And that video would have been allowed to have been brought back to their jury room and watched over and over again as many times as they need to. In this case, that didn't happen. They had to come out to the courtroom, request by the judge, get approved by prosecution and defense when they wanted to watch any portion of that video, which I found to be very interesting, meaning they didn't get to watch the video as much as those at home might have. And I think that's a concerning thing, in my opinion, because they should have had access to that video as much as they needed to. And as the impression it made on myself and others, I think it may have made a difference if they would have been able to see it more than once, more than twice. They only watched the video I think they watched it 3 times after they started deliberating, and 1 time during the trial. The rest were still shots. That's another issue that I had with this case. The state was able to essentially water that video down to still shots that represented 1/24th of a second. 1/24th of a second. So every still you saw was what was represented in 1/24th of a second. My issue with that is it's a totality issue. When you're looking at a self-defense case like this, the idea, the privilege of self-defense in Wisconsin is allowed to be applied, but it's applied from the standpoint of what the individual who's doing the crime, what was their perception of the events? How did they see things? And when you dissolve it down to stills, it makes it look like there was a lot more time, a lot more consideration, and a lot more things going on than what was really going on. And the concern is, with stills, is it takes away from the mindset. It takes away from the ability for the jury to consider in totality what this individual was seeing. In other words, if you watch that video, and we're going to watch it here in a moment, if you watch that video, you're going to see a man surrounded by 13 teens who are drunk, who are high, who are screaming at him, who are trying to incite as many people around that riverbed to come down and attack him. And in that moment, when he gets punched, and what he sees in that moment is he's down in the water and he's trying to figure out, what am I going to do here? How am I going to get these kids off me? Now, there have been some that have insinuated that there was testimony, and I watched all the testimony in the trial. I even went back and watched this testimony. There was a friend of his, and that this friend said, I warned him. I said, if you go over near that group of kids, they might think you're a predator. They might think you're weird for snorkeling. And he basically essentially said, I don't care. Now, some have suggested that was a basis for premeditation, that was a basis for saying, hey, he was looking to go engage with these kids, that he was looking to go and engage with these individuals because he was upset, because he was mad, because he was angry. And I would say to you that I see this totally different. I don't see an individual who's mad or angry. I would accept that if he went over and he started yelling at the kids and he started getting angry at the kids and he threatens the kids and he stabs them repeatedly. Remember, these were not people that were stabbed repeatedly. They were stabbed in a way, in my opinion, that was, get away from me. Stop hitting me. Stop pushing me. Much was made of the upward stabbing of unfortunately the individual that passed away. Well, when you're getting up because you're getting pushed down, you're going to be stabbing up. So everything happened in line, in my opinion, with self-defense. Everything happened in line with the theory of he's being attacked and he had to do something. Now, obviously, one of the decisions that the jurors had to make, or one of the things they had to conclude was did this start because he punched a girl? What I would submit to you is this. These kids believed he was a pedophile, or at least they kept heckling him as such. They misunderstood him when he said, I'm looking for a girl's phone. He said, oh, you're looking for little girls. They didn't clarify. They didn't ask and say, sir, let us help to try to understand the situation at this point. No. What they did is they continued to say, this is a pedophile. He's a predator. He's looking for little boys too. What are you trying to touch, little boys? Please help. He's a predator. He's a predator. Right? So these same individuals who are misstating what he's really doing in the water, who are inciting other people to come around, when they see him essentially responding to this girl pushing him down the river, or trying to push him, or trying to move him, and he essentially pushes her arms away, would it be beyond them to say he just hit a girl? I don't think it would be. So what I would suggest to you is he didn't hit anyone. He simply defended himself. And when you look at the video, when we watch this video, I want you to pay attention to it. I want you to pay attention to the movements of the young lady. I want you to see how she had her phone in her hand. I want you to see how the last moment we see her before everything breaks loose, she's coming at him. She's pushing at him. She's screaming at him. She's cussing at him. He pushes her hands away. They all say, you just hit a girl. One of the men in her party hears this and strikes him. And from there, everything breaks loose. From there, he begins being assaulted by multiple individuals. He's pushed down repeatedly, and he begins now having to defend himself. Remember, they're not yelling, "Hey, you're a stupid dude. Hey, you're annoying." No, they're yelling, "You're a pedophile. You're a predator." Does he have any belief that if people on this riverbank think he was messing with a little girl, that they're not going to beat the hell out of him, possibly kill him? I don't think that's unwarranted. I don't think that's crazy. As a result, he begins defending himself. So, First thing we're going to do here tonight is we're going to watch the verdict, and then we're going to go back and we're going to watch the video, and then we're going to give again any thoughts as we're watching the verdict and we're watching the video and we're watching testimony, key testimony in this case. Leave your thoughts in the comments, because this is meant to be an interactive show. This is meant to talk and discuss. So if you have a question for me, if you have a thought, leave it in the comments and we'll put it up on the screen. Just sweet. Absolutely. I'm glad you're here listening in. Appreciate you being here. Anybody else that stops in, please, give a thought to what you're seeing. Give a thought about the case if you're familiar with it. If you're not, ask me a question about it, and I'll be happy to inform you. All right. So without further ado, we're going to go into the video screening room. Give me one moment.
All right, please be seated.
All right, here we go, guys. So this is the verdict as it was read live.
All right, we are back in session on the record in State of Wisconsin versus Nikolai Mew. The attorneys are present with Mr. Mew. 12 jurors are in the courtroom. Mr. Ashland, I understand you are the foreperson.
Correct.
Did your jury reach a verdict?
Yeah.
Did you reach a verdict on each of the 6 counts?
Yes, we did.
Okay, please hand the verdict forms to the bailiff.
Now, when I first heard this verdict, I missed on the fact that it was reckless. I thought he was convicted of intentional. I heard first degree, and that's what I thought it was. But like I said, it really doesn't matter because he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. But here we go.
The verdicts read as follows. As to count 1 of the information, Isaac Schumann, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty.
All right. So I want to know, did you guys catch what I caught there? And you heard the judge, when he's looking through the verdict forms, goes, he was surprised by the verdict. I think he was very surprised that they came up with a reckless. Now, for Nikolai Mew, it could be very good news because, again, the addition of the reckless was added at the very end of the trial, slid in at the end. So that opens up the potential for an appellate court to review that for the fact that this was not something that was available for the defense to deal with. Even though the way the judge saw it is he said, well, it's kind of encapsulated in the entire defense. They're going for a defense of self-defense. So the jury might be able to say, well, he was recklessly using a knife all around the riverbed trying to defend himself, and it was reckless to do so. I think it's a bit confusing. I don't think you can get to recklessness. That's what his attorneys argued and said. It's an improper lesser because it's either intentional or it's self-defense. How do you get to reckless? What's the theory on reckless? He's either intentionally stabbing them or he's defending himself. What was the way the jury was going to come here to say this was a reckless act? It doesn't make any sense. But anyways, let's continue.
Of first-degree reckless homicide as submitted. Question, did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count 2 of the information, Alexander Martin, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted. Did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count 3 of the information, Dante Carlson, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted. Did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count 4 of the information, Anthony Carlson, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted. Did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count 5 of the information, Riley Madison, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted. Did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count 6 of the information, Madison Cohen, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty of battery as charged. Did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. Members of the jury, I do have to verify that this is in fact a unanimous verdict. So I'm going to ask each of you if I correctly read the verdict and if you agree with it. So when I call your name, if you agree with the verdict that I read, please answer by saying yes. If you disagree with the verdict, you can answer by saying no. Ms. Navarro, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Cook, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Snell, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Pelzel, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Knapp, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Diedrich, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. McMahon, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Henderlong, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Ashland, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. McMullen, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Lewandowski, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Any additional polling? No? All right. It is a unanimous verdict. Members of the jury, your service in this case is completed. You are free to read accounts about this trial.
All right, so, excuse me. That's the verdict, as was read. Guilty of all charges. They're going to set sentencing. It's, to my knowledge, sentencing hasn't been set yet. But that's what that's what the jury found. Obviously, not good news for Mr. Mew. Now, this is the video in question. So I want to watch this with you. We're going to go over it one more time. We're going to watch the video, and I want you to see everything that happens. Now, there's a video that's about 19 seconds that precedes this, where these kids are heckling him, calling him a raper, calling him names, and then this starts. So let's start the video right now.
What is he on? Whoa! Whoa!
So there he comes. He's running forward, and there's been a lot made. Now, there's been a lot made about what you just saw there, about him reaching forward. The question that a lot of people had is what was he reaching for? What was he doing? Remembering that he had just been called a name. He was being called a pedophile. He was being said that this was in a 19-second video that occurred a few seconds, I think they said there was about 3 seconds that elapsed between that video and this video, or the beginning of this video. Now, what I believe I see here is Mr. Mew is about 250 feet away at that point. This individual that you see, he's holding up a phone. Mr. Mew is looking for a phone. This phone is in a bag. Mr. Mew, again, is on the river. It's hard to hear. They're calling out to him. He believes, in my opinion, hey, he's seeing a phone. He's seeing a phone that he thinks, oh, you found the phone. He comes running over, and as he gets there to stop, remember, he's in a river where the water's moving, there's a current, and he stumbles. And that's what you saw there. So let's pick up now and continue watching.
What are you talking about?
And there you see he's up. He just dropped his snorkel. And see, look, they're laughing at him because he dropped the snorkel. He's trying to find it.
What's going on with y'all homie. He's on camera. Tripping.
Now he walks away. You see he's walking away.
Got that good quality. What do you say?
And now you see they're moving up on him. Now watch. Now this is the issue I have with this case. I want you to see in this video, and this is why it was so important that the jury saw this video. He's moving away. He's going the direction the state said all you had to do is walk away. That's what he's doing. These boys are coming to him. And all the jury wanted to look at was 10 seconds before. The significant part is he's moving away. He's walking away. He's going this way. Now, the important thing to understand here is over here, right? He needs to go over here. His party is like over here where my mouse key is. So, in order for him to get over there, he's got to walk out here and around to get around these kids. They're coming up on him. Now, watch what happens next.
Yes. Further culture.
Okay. So at this point, he starts saying for the culture because these kids, all right, are coming up on him. They're telling him to leave. They're telling him to essentially go backwards against the current. One of the young men has said, you have 10 seconds or we're going to begin beating your ass, basically. And Jawan here is saying for the culture. Do it for the culture. Now, one of the things that disappointed me about his defense attorney was they didn't look up what this meant. They didn't understand what this meant. For the culture means, if you look it up on Google, you can verify what I'm saying. It means doing something you would not normally do for the good of your group. So for the culture in this instance was we would normally not put hands on a 52-year-old man. But because this guy is looking for little girls, he's being a creeper, do it for the culture. Beat him up for the culture. That's what Jawan Cockfield is saying here. Do it for the culture. It's a battle cry. That's what you're hearing. And watch what happens. Let's watch how this progresses. Now here comes the ladies over here. They're coming over. Now look, he's trying to explain to them. Watch what happens.
Doesn't matter.
Now, watch what he's trying to explain what's going on. They're telling him to go this way. His party isn't that way. They're blocking him. He's trying to come over and get help. He's explaining, I'm trying to find a phone. I've lost my snorkel. The kids say, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter. You're about to catch an ass whooping. Does not matter. Let's play it forward. Jawan Cockfield says he's looking for little girls. He's looking for little girls. He said he was looking for little girls. That's what Jawan Cockfield is saying right now.
You're looking for little girls? Yeah.
Look, another one says, you're looking for little girls. Watch what he says. We have it on tape.
What? We're not out. I didn't have that part on camera, did I? Some young ass kid.
Look, and he says, I even have that part on camera. He's wanting them young ass kids. And watch, one of them is even going to say, what? You're looking for little boys? Now, again, is he screaming? Is he hollering? Is he telling people I'm going to kill you? No, he's trying to explain himself. He's trying to talk to these people that have walked over and inserted themselves. They haven't even tried to understand the situation. They've just started yelling at him. They're hearing from everyone else that he's looking for young girls. Allegedly, they have it on tape. And all these people want to do is move him down the river.
Problem, bro.
And there you see him wave down to his party, hand up. He's trying to get some help. He's trying to get some help down there. He's trying to let them know, I need some help. Because he's surrounded. They're not letting him move to them. They're wanting him to go in opposite direction. And the problem is, the opposite direction takes him away from his group. So how can he go down that direction? Let's keep watching. And there's Dante. That's the individual that's going to punch him out. So now, look. All right, so I want you to look at the situation he has here. He is surrounded. All sides. He could start to try to walk this way, but you know what they're going to do? They're going to stop over, and they'd stop him. Because at this point, these drunk teenagers, high, drunk, they're looking to cause trouble. Let's watch. And here she goes. I want you to watch right here. She puts her hands on him. Watch. Hands right there. She starts pushing on him. And he essentially says, don't do that. And she gets mad. She puts hands on him again. And if someone's putting hands on you or starts trying to push you, you have every right to say, stop, which is what he does. And then once again, as everything in this instance gets misstated, blown out of proportion, spoken about incorrectly, the group decides to say, he struck a girl. He hit a girl. He didn't hit a girl. He just simply said, get off me. Stop pushing me. I could fall. Let's watch. There it is. You see her push him. There's push. There it is right there. Now, that's when you're going to see in the video, as they still it down, he reaches in and gets his knife out. He's just been pushed. He's realizing they're getting physical with me. There she goes with her phone. Right up at his face. What's she doing with that phone up in his face? Why didn't they show this still? Phone in face. Remember this picture. Because that's what happens. Moments later, we don't see another picture. The camera's going to pan away. And the next thing you're going to see is Mr. Mew getting beaten up on the riverbed. We're supposed to believe this right hand strikes her in the face at this distance, and if she doesn't go down, she doesn't have blood coming out of her nose, she doesn't have any signs of damage. Now let's watch. Here it comes. Watch closely. What happens next? There's Dante. He's telling him to go away. Panning around, this group of individuals are yelling, they're cackling. Look at this. Look at the fun they're having, the insanity that's going on right now. Now they're pushing. Boom! They knock him down. They're pushing him. And now all hell's broke loose. So when you watch this, what do you see that would indicate this is reckless? In what way? How is this reckless? CT1 Cocktail got himself his video. This is a viral moment. For the culture, that's right. Jury definitely got it wrong. 100% frauditors lie. Remember what we saw the moment before it panned. her phone on his face. And they said, you hit a woman, or you strike a woman, or put hands on a woman. They didn't even say hit. They said put hands on a woman. They said, you put hands on a woman. That's what they said. They didn't say hit. They didn't say strike. They said he put hands on a woman. Because what happened is she pushes him or hits him with the phone, and he just blocks her back. And those guys see this and say, you put hands on a woman? And Dante comes over and says, fuck that. Boom! And they start beating him up right in the riverbed. And this jury decided he should spend the rest of his life in prison for that. Essentially, it was let them beat him up. Maybe he doesn't have the ability to walk, talk, whatever. Maybe he dies because, again, remember, he just gotten done with heart surgery not too long ago. Or do what he did. He survives, and he goes to prison for the rest of his life. Heck of a choice, huh? But that's the choice we have right now. You get accosted by a bunch of drunk teenagers who decide to paint you as a pedophile, ask people to come beat you up, won't let you get back to your party, corner you to a point that you have to defend yourself because they're pushing on you. Frauders lie. I don't even think that played a fact in anything, because what I saw them focusing on in jury deliberations was the punch. Was did he strike her? In other words, in their eyes, it was. I think the way this jury viewed it, and maybe I guess I can't say that wouldn't have contributed, but I think it was. I think they were stuck on the idea that if he struck her first, then self-defense goes away, and that they're thinking he's upset, he's mad. Again, obviously, the idea that somebody might be mad that they're being called a pedophile or a raper, or hey, you like little boys, that wouldn't incite you or get you mad and upset, isn't something that's hard to believe. So as a result, in this case, it's kind of exactly what happened here, is he got mad. At least that's what they think. But the way I see it is I didn't see anger there. I saw an individual who is trying to look for a cell phone, who's being called names, who's then being confronted, who's trying to explain himself, and no one cares to listen. He's got broken English. You could tell that when he testified. So English is his fifth language. So he's not going to understand everything that's happening on that riverbed at that moment. He's not going to understand the fast talking, the fast speaking. It's something that can be very hard. But the lying after the fact, do I think it made a difference? Yeah, I think it was the wrong thing for him to do. But I think it's easily understandable in the idea that, he's just been confronted by this angry group of teenagers. He's had to resort to stabbing them to get out safely. He knows that entire riverbed thinks he was doing something with children. In his mind, it's, let me just get the hell out of here. And I don't think he had any faith or trust that if he identified himself as the individual that did this in that moment, he didn't know what was going to happen. Would the police beat him up? Would they take him to the ground? Would they knock him out? Would people proceed to beat him some more? So to me, it makes perfect sense that he's like, I'm going to fade in the background. I'm going to, put some things on that doesn't make me look recognizable and try to get the hell out of here. And then sort out this mess when I get home. Consult with an attorney. Figure out, hey, what's the best way to deal with this? That's what I think. But I don't think the lying helped. I think it hurt his case. Absolutely. I mean, I think that his testimony, again, much like Jennifer Crumley's testimony, I don't think it was helpful at times. I think the idea that he didn't remember his interactions with the police when he should have just explained it and said, I lied. I was scared. Not, I don't remember. I think that they must have told him, like, you can say you don't recall, but he said it differently. He said, I don't remember. And he said it to things that he just didn't want to answer. And from the jury's perspective, it's your opportunity to explain it. I think the jury would have been very receptive to the idea that says, well, why did you choose to lie at that moment to the sheriff? Why did you choose to do this? It says, well, I'm very afraid. I think also culturally from where he come from, Romania, I don't think that they, look at how the Romanian government's treated, the individual over there that my sons are were interested when he got arrested. I can't remember. It's escaping my name, but it's the guy over there that got arrested. And, in that case, it's been reported on how corrupt the officials are in Romania. So I don't think he really naturally comes from a state where he says, I trust the police. I trust telling them. I trust, for him, it's like, what do you do? And the thing about it is, this is the thing that gets me. Everybody says, well, he should have acted a certain way because I would act a certain way. Well, how many times in your life, how many times do people repeatedly face situations like this? So how do you know what's normal? How do you know what your normal would be? How do you know how you would react? You don't, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. He's not some repeat criminal offender. So the fact that he lied or he didn't fess up right away or he didn't, whatever he did was unique to those circumstances. Might not have been the right thing to do, but it was what he did in that moment. It was a moment of trauma. It was a moment of chaos. It was a moment of where he was very scared. It was a moment where he had just been victimized. See, the problem is when you view him as a criminal, it changes everything. But if you view him as the victim in that case, how many times do we have a victim of SA, if I have to say that for YouTube purposes? How many times do they not report something when they're a victim of something? How many times do they go home and say nothing to no one? How many times do they blame themselves? How many times do they not react the way we want them to? Why is it that we say we don't want to shame them for their reaction to having gone through that? That's because when you go through a traumatic event, there isn't a right way to act. There isn't a wrong way to act. But if he was a victim, like we would all say he was if you believe he acted in self-defense, then for us to classify that behavior, well, I think we're being unfair because he was a victim of a gang attack that he had to defend himself in. So what was he supposed to do? We don't know. How would you react if you'd just been attacked by 13 people on a riverbank? What would your reaction be? Would it be like Mr. Muse? I don't know. I don't know. What would your reaction be? I think it's unfair to Mr. Mew when we view him as a criminal and don't consider the victim. And here's the thing. The jury, because of the presumption of innocence, should have started there. They should have presumed he was innocent. In other words, they should have presumed he acted in self-defense and then looked and said, hey, is that consistent with that? Is there a consistent theory that goes to innocence? If there is, if the evidence suggests it could be this, and there isn't definitive evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that he didn't act in self-defense, they should have returned a verdict of not guilty in this case. But see, the problem is everyone wanted to think of him as a criminal and said, well, how does a criminal react? Well, he didn't react the way we thought. He ran down the riverbed. He left. He lied. See, we didn't think of him as a victim of a traumatic event, where we say, how should this have happened? What should you have done? Was it right? Was it wrong? But we have no problem when somebody is a victim of, say, SA, right? And they don't report something. We don't hold that against them. They don't go and tell the truth right away. They might lie and say, no, it never happened. But that's because the traumatic nature of the event causes them to not be able to discuss it, to not act right, to not react right. So, but instead of analyzing it, so to me, the actions afterwards should not matter. It should be, what do we see in that video? And I think anyone who watches that video who doesn't see a man getting attacked, an older man getting attacked by 13 drunk kids, who gets punched, who gets run up on, who's being blocked and impeded. There was testimony that said we made a wall. He couldn't get back to his party. He had no, and then he ends up getting punched in the face, accused of being a pedophile, accused of hitting women. If you don't believe he was a pedophile, and nobody does, if you don't believe he was looking for little girls, and nobody should because he wasn't, he said he was looking for a girl's phone, then you shouldn't really believe either that he was hitting girls either on the riverbank, because everything that was being said was lies on that riverbank. Lies meant to incite. And the fact that they slid in a reckless, because the state knew they had no chance. If it was intentional or nothing, the jury would go with nothing. Which is why I believe that's going to be the reason why this case could get reversed. Because of the fact that they slid that in at the end the way they did. And that the theory of the case really did not present itself as a reckless case. Now, the judge said, well, there was evidence and really the jury should be able to consider it. They could maybe possibly come to this. No, the jury would compromise at that. But nobody in their right mind could look at that and say, well, that was what you saw on that tape was reckless. It was either intentional because he got hit and he was angry, or it was self-defense. There is no in between. And anybody honestly reviewing this would not honestly say that they think that he recklessly did anything. Anyways, let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. So, this is the show, guys. This is what I wanted to come on. I wanted to watch that video with you one more time. The last thing I'm going to play for you is his attorneys and what they had to say about the verdict. So give me a moment here. We're going to cue that up. And
obviously, disagree. So with deep sadness.
How's Nikolai doing? What was his reaction to how everything went out?
He's, I thought, showed appropriate emotion throughout. He's had a deep sadness, and as he said on the initial tape to the police, he said, he was sorry. I know when this case first started and there was talks about what we could do to help alleviate some of the stress and pain that other people were feeling. We did what we could in that moment, and I think that was a large part because Nick wanted to take the lead on that, and so He
I
continues
think you
to
can see just
feel
how
those feelings. He's sad,
devastated these
obviously
two guys are.
disappointed in the result, and contemplating his future life.
Did he tell you anything?
I told us lots of things.
Can you share?
Shared what I wanted.
I mean, you can tell he's stunned, but the interesting thing, I don't get the feeling from them. Normally, you hear defense attorneys, they come out and say, "We're going to appeal, we're going to do this." These guys, they don't really have that vibe, and that's kind of a little. I'm actually surprised because I feel like there are there are several areas that they should be that they would feel should be explored. One of them being slipping that instruction at the last minute, but I think at this point, I think they really thought they were going to get a not guilty verdict. I believe this gentleman that's speaking here at the mic, he was actually Kyle Rittenhouse's attorney, and he had gotten a not guilty in that case. And that case, I believe, was a harder case to get a not guilty in than this case because it involved a semi-automatic gun. But, clearly not. This case, unfortunately, involved kids at a river, so I guess maybe a little harder hill to climb. Let's listen to the rest.
Mr. Nelson, these charges were added on at the end. That's something the public's, that aren't used to trials may not completely understand. Can you touch on that, as well as what kind of penalties he could be facing now in this sentence?
Yeah. So he was originally charged with intentional crimes. By deduction, it seems like he was found. They couldn't agree on the intentional crimes, so they moved on to the reckless, and that's what he was charged with. Reckless crimes are a lesser included offense of the intentional crimes. There's still substantial life-changing penalties that he faces.
What was your thoughts coming into today when you walked in the courthouse? Did you feel good about the case?
We felt like we had a good case. We felt like we had a good defense. We felt like we put on a good defense. But in many ways, self-defense is a community standard, and it's very dependent upon which group of 12 people within the community you ask. I understand and appreciate that. We had a lot of complex feelings going in. We felt confident, but we're also aware that it's not math. It's not black and white. It's a community standard.
Were you expecting a verdict today when you walked in? Did you think it would take longer for them to get something?
No real expectations, whatever. With juries are unpredictable, so. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And those who
All right, so there you have it, guys. Interesting statement there. He said, and I think that was an interesting take. Self-defense is a community standard, and it truly is. But I ask, what is the standard? I mean, when you consider what he said there as self-defense being a community standard, so what has this jury said? This jury has basically said that, it's okay for a group of drunk, heckling teenagers to heckle an individual, accuse them of absolutely heinous acts against kids, corner them, block and impede his travel, put their hands on him, and then when he attempts to get out of the situation, they physically assault him, and he's supposed to, I guess what, just allow them to hit him. I mean, that's the standard. Get beat up because it's kids. I guess that's the standard. I mean, I don't understand what section of their community that they're dealing with who would say this is okay. Who would say that this should be okay. And if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch it. Sir. We watched it earlier in the broadcast. We're not going to watch it again. And I want you to watch. There's an important part we stopped it at, and it's of that young lady right moments before everything breaks loose, and she's got the phone up near his face. It looks like she's about to hit him with that phone and poke him with the phone. And wouldn't the natural reaction be, if you're getting poked in the face with a cell phone, to simply push that phone back and say, stop that? Just like she had started to put her hands on him. We had the first strike, and he kind of says, what are you doing? And then she's going in his face, get down, get the down the river. And he pushes it back, and then they say, you put your hands on a girl? Doesn't say hit. Doesn't say punch. Now, Obviously, in the case, in the trial, there is video played, in all fairness, where she's coming off the river up near where the police cars are, and she says, he punched me. I don't know why he did that. You don't know why he did that. You're putting your phone in his face. You're enraged. You're angry. You're pushing on him. What he was doing was in response to what you were doing. He was defending himself at that moment. And then he gets jumped by individuals in your group who get mad because they say, hey, you shouldn't have touched her at all. You had no right to touch her. And again, obviously the jury felt differently. But it's a disturbing verdict nonetheless. And as we move into next week with the Karen Reed jury, they're going to be impaneling that jury. She's case out of Massachusetts. There's got to be a lot of concern about what's going on here, about the fundamental misunderstanding that these juries are having about what their role is, how they're fundamentally misunderstanding that. This starts from a presumption of innocence, and there is no way, if you start from a presumption of innocence in this case, watching that video, listening to that testimony, realizing that all the testimony is inconsistent and contradicting itself, you're left with that video. And when you look at that video, can you say beyond a reasonable doubt that that wasn't self-defense? I don't believe anybody can in good faith say, when you just watch that video and you watch what happened in that video, that you could say beyond a reasonable doubt that it wasn't self-defense. And that's the standard. If there's any doubt in your mind, it's not guilty. It's not reckless. It's not some compromised verdict. It's not guilty. That's what he's entitled to. That's what every American's entitled to. And in this case, they ignored the presumption of innocence. They ignored the burden of the state. The state tried to shifted their burden, in a sense, by slipping into reckless, understanding that this jury would struggle with intentional, and said, well, they're settled on reckless, and they knew that would be a life sentence anyways. And they locked this man up for the rest of his life for defending himself on that riverbed. He's lost everything. His wife's divorced him. Whatever job he had, whatever retirement he had, of course, it really doesn't matter. He's given it to those attorneys. He'll give it to his appellate attorneys. Now, the other thing is, obviously, there's a young man that lost his life. That is a tragedy beyond tragedy. That is terrible. And there's a group of kids who think it wasn't their fault. It wasn't how they acted. It wasn't what they said. It wasn't what they did that brought them to this. There was no lesson learned. So it will happen again. It's the way things are going today. It's the way society believes it's okay because, hey, they're kids. No, this was not just a group of kids being kids. This was a group of kids being insightful, dangerous individuals, and their actions led to their friend getting killed. And they've walked away. Just like that prosecutor says, I'm so happy because we'll never ever hear that those kids were the cause of this, but they were. And that's the wrongness of it. And the lessons that should be taken from the actions and behaviors on that riverbed will never be learned. You just don't do those things. You don't play around with those things. It's not funny. You don't accuse somebody of the crimes he was accused of what he never did. It's not funny. It's not a joke. Demonstrates why underage drinking is a problem when you introduce drinking to immature people, introduce marijuana to immature people. And what ends up happening is what you saw here. That resulted in a loss of many lives, in injuries to many people, and damage and changes to people's lives that were beyond comprehension of those young kids in the moments you saw on that video. So, guys, this is the show. We've gone an hour. What a tragic case. But I wanted to dedicate an entire show talking about this, going through this, and walking through that video with you. You see the QR code here on the screen. It's the best way to support the channel, which is buy me a coffee. So buy me a coffee if you enjoyed the show tonight. I appreciate all of you. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button, depending on what medium or platform you're on. We're rolling on all the platforms right now tonight. Kick, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, all of them. So whatever platform you might watch this on or see this on, I appreciate you watching. Hit the follow, hit the like, and we'll be back. I'm not sure if we'll go live tomorrow night. I'm going to try to do this earlier. I've been saying that for a while. I want to get Justice Watch Live as more of an evening show. Got to get more of a schedule going. But I appreciate you all. I appreciate everybody that's watching. Be on the lookout for Franklin Tucker episode 2, Gagged, Why They Silenced Franklin Tucker. It's in production. It'll be released soon. And next week we will start the Karen Reed trial if it does go off, and go from there. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys soon. I appreciate you all. Until we talk again, let justice prevail.